Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayed Srinmatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasto Hyabhadrani Vitunoti Suhritsatam Nashtah Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatiruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 29, text 33 to 35. Second. Text 33. Yata hi purusho bharam shirasa gurumudvahan tam skandena sa adatte tata sarva prakirtayah. Yata hi purusho bharam sirasa gurum udvaham tam skandena sadadatte tata sarva pratikriyaha. Yata hi purusho bharam shirasa gurum udvahan tam skandena sadadatte tata sarva pratikriyaha. Synonyms. Yata, as he, certainly, purushaha, a man, bharam, burden, sirasha, on his head, Gurum, heavy, Udvahan, carrying, Tam, that, Skandena, on his shoulders, Saha, he, Adatte, puts, Tata, similarly, Sarvaha, all, Pratikriyaha, counteractions. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. A man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another. Purport. This is a very good description of an attempt to transfer a burden from one place to another. When one gets tired of keeping a burden on his head, he will place it on his shoulder. This does not mean that he has become freed from the strains of carrying the burden. Similarly, human society, in the name of civilization, is creating one kind of trouble to avoid another kind of trouble. In contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. But at the same time, we have created other problems. We have to construct so many roads, and yet these roads are insufficient to cope with automobile congestion and traffic jams. There are also problems of air pollution and fuel shortage. The conclusion is that the process we manufacture to counteract or minimize our distress do not actually put an end to our pains. It is all simply illusion. We simply place the burden from the head to the shoulder. The only real way we can minimize our problems is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give ourselves up to His protection. The Lord, being all powerful, can make arrangements to mitigate our painful life in this material existence. Text 34. नैकान्ततः प्रतिकारः कर्मणां कर्म केवलं द्वयं हि अविद्योपर्श्रं स्वप्ने स्वप्न इवानघ नैकान्तनः प्रतिकारः कर्माणां कर्म केवलं द्वयं हि अविद्योपश्रितं स्वप्ने स्वप्न इवानघ नैकान्तनः प्रतिकारः कर्माणां कर्म केवलं द्वयं हि अविद्योपश्रितं स्वप्ने स्वप्न इवानघ. Synonyms: na, never, ekantah, and ultimately, pratikaraha, counteraction, karmanam, of different activities, karma, another activity, kevalam, only, dvayam, both, he, because, avidya, due to illusion, upashritam, accepted, swapne, in a dream, swapnaha, a dream, iva, like, anaga, oh, you who are free from sinful activities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Narada continued, "O you who are free from all sinful activity, no one can counteract the effects of fruitive activity simply by manufacturing a different kind of activity devoid of Krishna consciousness. All such activity is due to our ignorance. When we have a troublesome dream, we cannot relieve it with the troublesome hallucination. One can counteract a dream only by awaking. Similarly, our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. Unless we awaken to Krishna consciousness, we cannot be relieved of such dreams. For the ultimate solution to all problems, we must awaken to Krishna consciousness. Purport. There are two kinds of fruitive activity. We can place the burden on the head or we can place it on the shoulder. Actually, keeping the burden in either place is the same. The transferal, however, is taking place under the name of counteraction. In this connection, Prahlada Maharaj said that fools and rascals in the material world plan so gorgeously for bodily comfort without knowing that such arrangements, even if successful, are only Maya. People are working hard day and night for illusory happiness of the body. This is not a way to achieve happiness. One has to get out of this material entanglement and return home back to Godhead. That is real happiness. The Vedas therefore enjoin don't remain in the darkness of this material world, go to the light of the spiritual world. To counteract the distress of this material body, one has to take on another distressed condition. Both these situations are only illusion. There is no gain in taking on one trouble to counteract another trouble. The conclusion is that one cannot be perpetually happy as long as one exists in this material world. The only remedy to get out of this material world altogether and return home back to Godhead. Text 35. अर्थे हि अविद्यमानेऽपि संश्रुतिर्न निवर्तते मनसा लिङ्गरूपेण स्वप्ने विचरतो यथा अर्थे हि अविद्यमानेऽपि संश्रुतिर्न निवर्तते मनसा लिङ्गरूपेण स्वप्ने विचरतो यथा अर्थे ह्यविद्यमानेऽपि संश्रुतिर्न निवर्तते मनसा लिङ्गरूपेण स्वप्ने विचरतो यथा. Synonyms. Arte, factual cause. He, certainly. Avidyamane, not existing. Api, although. Samshritihi, material existence. Na, not. Nivartate, ceases. Manasa, by the mind. Linga rupena, by subtle form. Swapne, in a dream. Vicharataha, acting. Yata, as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Sometimes we suffer because we see a tiger in a dream or a snake in a vision, but actually there is neither a tiger nor a snake. Thus, we create some situation in a subtle form and suffer the consequences. These sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream. Purport. As stated in the Vedas, the living entity is always separate from two kinds of material bodies, the subtle and the gross. All of our sufferings are due to these material bodies. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 2.14. Matras parishastu kaunteya sitoshna sukhadukkadaha agamapayino nityastam titikshava bharata. O son of Kunti, the non permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like appearance and disappearance of summer and winter seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Lord Krishna thus informed Arjuna that all the distresses brought about by the body come and go. One has to learn how to tolerate them. Material existence is the cause of all our sufferings, for we do not suffer once we are out of the material condition. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should factually understand that he is not material but is actually Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. This understanding cannot be fully realized unless one is engaged in Brahman activities, namely devotional service. To get free from the material conditions, one has to take to Krishna consciousness. That is the only remedy. श्री प्रभुपाद की जय नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यादि पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसति गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. I humbly bow down to all the Tamil Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. So today we are discussing fourth canto, um, and this is Narada Muni explaining King Prachina Barhi on the futility. He has actually explained the entire story of Puranjana and then the allegorical story where the explanation in terms of how every aspect of the story was actually a representation of the life in Prachina Barhi's life, right? So Narada Muni, after giving that story, he's actually piercing the wheel, and then he's saying that the person who was explained in the story is none other than the king himself, and he explains that why the soul suffers in this way. It is not because that the world is bad, but because of a fundamental mistake in how we try to solve our problems. So just reading through this purport and this verses, it actually struck me about this particular chapter in Science of Self-Realization. This is the sixth chapter in Science of Self-Realization, where Srila Prabhupada titled it "The Spiritual Solution to Material Problems." So the crux of the message in the three verses is Srila Prabhupada is explaining is that whatever we try to do to mitigate our current material situation is only like shifting the burden from the head to the shoulders. So this is a very powerful allegory. And there are a lot of realizations we can take from this. A couple of them I would like to share is so we think about material advancement. So when we make material advancement, that's exactly how we progress, is the entire crux of the Western civilization. So material advancement means helping make our lives comfortable. So anything, so Srila Prabhupada gives an example here where he talks about the invention of automobiles. And basically we invented automobiles because we were not able to move from one place to another as quickly, and then that solved one problem, one problem of like locomotion, but it created multiple other problems. Srila Prabhupada talks about here how it created traffic jams and lack of infrastructure and stuff like that. So that basically says that the anything we do is basically going to have two sides. Even though we try to solve a problem, it actually opens up other problems. So we see this happening every time, right? So the another example which comes to my mind is the advent of social media, right? So social media was actually touted as a way for people to connect with each other and then form social connections. But basically we are seeing like how the effect of teen suicides and things like teenage depression, all these are actually precipitated by this social media because of the negative effects of it. So we try to solve a problem, but it creates multiple other problems. So similarly, we know like how this entire economic system is actually like a bubble. Like for example, if when the COVID situation happened, the US economy went into shrinkage, and then it actually pumped a lot of money into it and basically moved the problem to the world basically. So that's just the way how this material world functions. So Srila Prabhupada, in that chapter, the sixth chapter of Science of Self-Realization, he says that there is only one solution. The problem is we are the Tatastha Shakti, which is the marginal potency of the Lord, and we have our ability to either move towards matter or move towards the spirit, a supreme lord. But because of this entire material creation is having this common principle of duality. So when you say something is hot, it is the absence of cold which makes it hot, and when you say something is cold, it's the absence of heat which makes it hot, right? So anytime you have one, you have the other face of it as well available. So the only way Srila Prabhupada explains is that attuning to our true nature, which is to go towards the spiritual platform, and understanding our position as the part and parcel of Krishna, and trying to do yoga, which is bhakti yoga, to connect ourselves to the Supreme Lord. So that's the only way we'll be able to counteract this problem of this material world. So Srila Prabhupada gives multiple examples here, and in the second verse, the verse 34, he talks about the dream solution. So he says, counteracting one karmic activity with another is not a final solution. Since both activities are done in ignorance, they act like an actor in a dream trying to solve the problems within the dream. So due to Swapne Swapna. So just like how if you have a dream and then you are probably being chased by a tiger, just by you cannot have another dream in the same dream thinking that you're away from the tiger. But the only way to get rid of that problem is by awakening. And that awakening is actually understanding our true connection to the Supreme Lord. And so if you think about the examples which Srila Prabhupada quotes, so Prabhupada says this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is actually quoted by Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj, when he saw Narsimhadev, so Narsimhadev was, and he was Narsimhadev was completely pacified by presence of Prahlad, and then Prahlad Maharaj prayed to Narsimhadev, and then in his prayers he is saying नैवोद्विजपरा दुरत्यय वैतरण्यास् त्वद्वीर्य गायन महामृत मग्न चित्ता सोचे ततो विमुख चेतस इंद्रियार्थे maya sukara bharam udbahato vimudan. So Prahlad Maharaj says, like, I'm not worried about my existence, because I'm completely attached to hearing your glorious pastimes, your names, and your form, and then and I'm completely immersed. Magna chitta. My consciousness is completely immersed in your pastimes. But my only concern is that these people who are in this material world, they're making these elaborate plans. He says, Maya Sukhaya Bharam. Bharam means like making elaborate plans to enjoy this material world, and they're trying to maintain their families, societies, and countries. And I'm simply concerned out of love for them. So this is the greatness of a true Vaishnava. A true Vaishnava, he's already past this material condition, and he knows that who the Supreme Lord is, and he knows his relationship with the Supreme Lord. But he, out of his costless mercy, he prays for the people who are entangled in this material world. And this is very interesting, because anything, even the advancements in current AI which we are making, is actually, we are thinking that it's going to give us more in terms of productivity. It's going to make us more economically wealthy and abundant and stuff like that. That's the overall theme of all these investments. But basically what is happening is every company is like having is adding debt, and then creating a lot of distress in the economy. So sometimes it feels like it's just Sukhaya Bharam Udvagatam Vimudan. Why go through all this effort while the thing you're trying to achieve is to make yourself more comfortable? But the only way to do that, and we have seen this in multiple inventions and multiple scientific discoveries in this material world, that there is no way we can be happy unless we solve the four issues, which is birth, death, old age, and disease. And that is impossible to do until we are in this material body. And what the only way to get past these four problems of life is to understand our spiritual nature, which is Sat Chit and Ananda. So basically, the problem is we are eternal spiritual living entities, and we are in this material body, but we are trying to solve the we are trying to achieve our nature, which is this nature of the spirit, which is Sat Chit and Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, with the material body and with this material world, which is completely antithetical, which is not equivalent in energy. So the only way we can achieve happiness or attain our true nature is to understand that our nature is spiritual and act in that capacity. So that's Srila Prabhupada's message, that he says, unless one takes to the Krishna consciousness, it is not possible for one to counteract this material conditions. So he explains like Daivi hi esha gunamai mamamaya dhuratya. So he says that there are multiple ways we can understand this. So this Maya is an energy of the Supreme Lord, and it is a way for us to understand that anything and everything we do in this material world will not will not aid our true nature, which is to be spiritual. And that true nature is what gives us this Satchit and Ananda. So we are all seeking pleasure, we are all seeking knowledge, and we are all seeking eternity. We want to live eternally. So that's the same, but we are trying to achieve this with our material conditions, which is creating this imbalance energy. And that is why Srila Prabhupada explains that it is not possible to counteract this material sufferings with more karmic activity, because it is only going to get us more entangled. So this chapter which I mentioned, Science of Self-Realization, that's a very interesting dialogue between Lieutenant Mosey and Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada talks to great detail about like how the entire problem of this material creation is this disconnect between the spiritual energy and the material energy. So I know many of us would have read this early, but if you get a chance, I urge everybody to go and read that particular chapter. It's a very interesting conversation. So with